Alright, hello everyone. Welcome back to another stream about React.js. So, basically, before we get started with, you know, working on our Dungeons and Dragons app built with React.js, I'd like to take, a moment to thank you all of you for your kind support, for following me. So we have 29 followers since the last stream. There's Kyle and Jcorn and Proof and Dragan. It's really hard to pronounce some of these names, so I hope I'm not getting them terribly wrong. Maybe we'll see some familiar faces, maybe some new faces. I remember Gweneret and Lyard. Oh, hi, Lyard. That's probably not how it's pronounced, but I'm really not sure. Maybe you can help me out with that. Yeah, welcome back to the stream. So, before we get started, would be a great idea to review what we basically had accomplished last time and see what the agenda we will have for today, and maybe discuss some random little tidbits that were sort of left unanswered last time. So to give you guys a reminder, if you're just joining us now, we had built a little application for Dungeons and Dragons using React, which was basically meant to help dungeon masters keep track of turn order for players and monsters in the game. So basically, the higher your initiative, the higher your order, like in turn-based strategy games. And we made it so you could add stuff, you could edit things, you could roll a d20 to change, so you don't have to physically roll a dice for these non-player characters, and everything would get sorted in real time. So that was really cool, but the code that we had produced was perhaps not of the highest quality. Certainly a lot of things we could have changed, like extracting some common methods and functionalities and reworking some of the logic behind the sorting and how generally we're managing the state. Some other things that we could possibly be implementing are prop types, and we'll be talking about those today mostly. We'll be securing our components at runtime. We're using prop types. It's really good in development. Helps you catch a lot of bugs, helps you write code that's easier to maintain, especially for other engineers who are joining into the project. All of the code is on GitHub. I commit during the stream, so it's always up to date. You can always pull it and have fun with it. Sure, send the pull request if something's really bothering you and I don't give it enough attention during the stream itself. You can also follow me on Twitter. I don't post that much stuff, mostly updates about the stream and some helpful articles that I find and share. And that should be all the basics covered, I suppose. I'll leave this on, I guess, so I can follow the chat. Man, Twitch, for some reason, whenever I try to go to my channel page, it's always gonna do a refresh. And not only that, it's also going to like mess up the styling and the theme and everything. Really not sure why that's happening. Might be because of some of the extensions I'm using, like the ad blocker is obviously causing some problems there, and Privacy Badger probably not the ideal tool for major sites like Twitch, but whatever. So let's get into it. Um, Remember, this is our code from last time. Um, we basically have this one giant component called app.js that's handling the state, which is basically like an array of elements where every element has an ID, a name, an initiative, and the number of hit points. Basically, these three things you see on the interface, and like an ID to provide some uniqueness to each item. We did extract one component called card, which is basically, each of these little things, and we extracted like the individual inputs. We thought that that would be like a pretty good idea to extract the input and the label to one component and make this card component a lot easier to read. Um, we never really got around to extracting the buttons properly. They're just hanging on in there throughout our code base as regular JSX buttons. We didn't really create any abstraction there. We have a little like utilities file with some simple like random functions. I mean, they produce like random outputs. They're there for a reason, obviously. And yeah, we have some like simple CSS, nothing groundbreaking. We're not using CSS in JS or like any post processors. That's not really like the focus of this stream, but if people are interested in learning more about it, uh, I'd be happy to stream that as well. Might also give me a good chance to like learn about CSS Grid finally. That could be interesting. So, and remember, guys, during the stream, feel free to like chat. I'll be checking the logs occasionally. If you have any questions or there's something bugging you or in general, whatever it is, feel free to post it in the chat. All right, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna get rid of these binds. During the previous stream, one of the viewers noticed that well, they weren't they didn't understand they're still like using an explicit bind this syntax when you could actually use arrow functions to bind things. And that was a really good point, I think. Uh, Honestly, I think my answer was, it's habit at this point, and I don't really care about it. But, thinking back to it, I think it would improve the quality of this code if we just got rid of these explicit binds and used arrow functions. So I'm not 100% sure what the syntax is like. Do you do this? That doesn't seem right, does it? So is that the syntax right now? Is that how we bind class methods? Yeah. So I guess I'm gonna go through all of the class methods and basically turn them into arrow functions. Someone also asked why there's no music during these streams or whatever. I personally don't mind having any music. I love listening to music while I work. Uh, my problem with it is that I'm not sure like what musical taste we should be going for and where we can like find some high quality music that won't cause copyright issues when I post these streams on YouTube and Twitch, because every stream is basically being recorded and it will be published like a couple of hours later. So yeah, this was like not a particularly difficult refactor, all things considered, but we got the constructor block uh, a lot shorter now. Okay, that's a good way to get started. Um, Next thing we could do is, and this is something that I talked about during the stream last time, is these update methods. They're really kind of annoying at the moment because it's basically the same code, potentially with like minor differences here and there. The only major difference here being like between update name and update hit points is that we're casting like casting it down into a number, but really there's no need for that actually. Um, so and for like update initiative, yeah, we're also casting it to a number, and it might actually make sense there because uh, we need the numbers for our sorting. And we're doing like this little thing with timeouts because we're not sorting the list every time the user updates the initiative field. We're waiting like 500 milliseconds or so before like re-rendering everything. See, it doesn't happen automatically in case you're like editing. Well, there you go. Obviously not very smooth because we don't have any animations yet. That's maybe going to be the topic of today's streams. Animations in React should be a topic you're probably interested, especially if you're new with React. So yeah, 5 people watching right now. I'm curious also where you guys are from, what your tech stack is, what are you working on? Are you junior developers? Are you still in college doing like an internship or something? Please let me know in the chat. I'd be happy to hear about your experiences. And really, like exchanging experiences with other people and where you are in life right now is a very powerful tool for personal growth, I feel. And it's really cool that we can like communicate like this through Twitch and whatever. It's really awesome. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna start by basically abstracting the things that are common among these functions and seeing how we could potentially uh, place that all of that into a single function that does this for us. So this is kind of basically all the same. The only difference is what we're basically setting. And we could potentially turn that into a third parameter and like not worry too much about it really. So maybe something like that. And then here we would just call Well, actually, we don't even have to bother with it that much. We could like put the name of the field here, right? Let's put initiative on hold for now because it's a bit more complex. So that's the name of our fields. And let's just get rid of like update name and update hit points entirely. Just call update, right? So we replace that with update field actually. So we replace those two methods with like a single one essentially. And that should work just fine. Yeah, so everything, bandit and like some name there. All right, yeah, that's working as expected. And obviously, since it's going to be like the same method anyway, no need for us to have like uh, more props than is really necessary. So let's get rid of uh, these props. Call this like on update field. And in our card component, get rid of this. The perils of incorrect copy paste. What could possibly go wrong? And by the way, if you watched my previous stream, you'll remember that I used Visual Studio Code that time. Right now, I'm using WebStorm from IntelliJ. I actually had like trial period where I evaluated WebStorm, and I found it to be a superior integrated development environment. Obviously not something everyone is going to agree on, but I got my boss to like buy me a license for it, so I'm currently using that. Yeah. Curious to hear what editors or IDs you guys are using. Right, so yeah, everything works just fine. Awesome. So we were able to like squish those two methods into a single like abstraction ready method called update field. Our only problem here right now is like this update initiative, which is basically the same but a bit different, obviously. But really, the only different part is this and this. So what we can do is simply like call this update field, pass it the parameters that we need. We have that abstraction going for us, so it doesn't really matter. And we can keep like this specific stuff in there. Because I wouldn't really want to like put that specific logic in update field, and this is good enough. I feel it makes the code a lot easier to read. And we're using our abstraction like on 3 different places, so we're not duplicating any code unnecessarily. Yeah, let's give it like a quick test to see if it still works. Awesome. down to the bottom you go. Okay, and everything is sorted nicely and everything works as expected. Okay, pretty good. So can we do this even better? Is the next question. Like we were able to like basically remove two methods and completely trim one down with this abstraction, but maybe we can do something better here, or maybe make the code, or maybe the logic would stay the same and everything, but maybe we could um, abstract it a little bit better. So like one thing we could do is extract the value right here using some like advanced syntax, but I don't feel that's particularly worth it, and it doesn't really make the code that easier to read. Yeah, so potentially these two lines could be abstracted so that we could have like one function called update at index or something. Um, and that actually sounds like something that's worth doing. So what would that look like? Well, I think we would like, let's call it like update list at index. No, maybe like good question. Like what would you call that function? It's a function that maybe does too much already. So it's supposed to like filter through the list and then update it. Yeah, good. I don't know. Let's call it like this for now. So what we want to do is like pass in a list and the value that we're updating and the item element ID, I suppose. So what I'm basically like attempting to do here is just move this logic away from the component into a separate place where you can potentially write separate tests and everything. Oh, that's right. We also need like the name of the field. So like, like the key value pair that's being updated. Now, the problem with this in JavaScript though is that we're essentially mutating like the parameter that was passed in. So when you do this, you're mutating what you received from the outside, which isn't a really good thing in my opinion. But immutability is hard in JavaScript without help of libraries or some kind of abstraction over the existing array structures and objects. So maybe what we could do is like define our own list. Yeah. So what this basically does is copy the list into like a new object. So we're not mutating the list that we received as a parameter. It's an extra step from what we started with, but it's not like it's gonna impact performance or anything. And I think that it's a good trade-off considering, like what we're getting for it. So here's how we're going to use that function. We're going to basically supply this state elements as an argument. Then we're going to provide our ID, the field, and the value. And now we can get rid of all of this stuff. Let's see if that works as expected. We're writing a lot of code here blindly, but it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so that works pretty well. Awesome. Potentially have prettier format this stuff for you, but this is fine. So why did we do this? Why did we Gwenoret? Yes, it's Philip. Danic is like my surname. Philip is awesome. A lot of people pronounce it Danic because obviously it's what it sounds like. I don't mind. I think it's cute. Thank you for joining the stream again. Good to see you back. How are things going, everyone? We're up to 8 live viewers right now. So I said this at some point. I'd be really happy to hear what you guys are up to. What technology you're working with. Are you happy with it? Are you unhappy with it? Stefan. That's a great point, Stefan. Stefan also being a colleague of mine, actually. Really happy to see him on the stream today. So what Stefan is proposing is that we use, I always forget, is it the rest or the spread operator? One with the object, there's one with the objects and one with the list. One is called rest, the other is called spread. So this is pretty good. I'm wondering if there's any major difference to using what Stefan is suggesting as opposed to what we've done here. So basically doing this. Good point. If anyone can think of a good reason why you would use one over the other, that would be good to hear. I guess from a code readability standpoint of view, this looks a lot easier to read. And it's not as obscure, because if you don't know what slice does actually, you might be confused, like, how is this actually copying the array? Rest parameters and spread operator. Yeah, that sounds about right, I think. So yeah, terrific. Let's go on. So we were able to take those 3 big methods that were basically doing the same thing and sort of abstract them into a single method called update field. And that's a huge win for us right now. It's making the code easier to read. It's still not amazing. There's still a lot of stuff to crawl through here. Like add card, for example, is another example of and remove element. That's also a potential refactor target, but the real issue here is what we're using to manage our state in the first place. Because React set state is really simple to understand, really easy to use, but it is like encouraging you to write some layered spaghetti code that quickly becomes tangled in cases where you have like this big container component that's managing everything. Uh, we're not going to get into Redux today, but that's sort of to get you basically thinking how we could be managing this state somewhere outside and how we could be doing this, in a cleaner way, I suppose. Okay, so some more comments on the stream. You also might need a polyfill. Um, yeah, but in this case, you're transpiling your code using Babel, probably, since you're already like working with React. Um, Also with like the starter kit that we use, like create React app, that shouldn't be much of a problem. Yeah, exactly, Stefan. I'm using create React app with the Babel presets. So we don't really have to worry much about the polyfills and stuff, but that is generally something to keep in mind if you're integrating React into an existing project. For example, we have it work like this, something of a legacy system where we slowly started introducing React components. And despite the transpilation that Babel is providing, some things didn't work out of the box on Internet Explorer 11. So that might be a potential concern, but here it seems like we don't really have to worry about it. And besides, it's a learning project, so I think we're fine. Okay, so bad Santa, thank you for following me on Twitch. Uh, Hope you're enjoying the stream. Would be very very happy to like um, hear what you're doing, what you're up to. Are you here to like chill out, or are you a beginner with React looking to learn? Let me know. The chat is right there. So moving on, what else could we do that could impact our code positively? So these buttons are basically annoying as shit right now. They're all over the place. Um, I think some of them even have like specific styling rules or something. No, we're just using like the on click. Yeah, seems like something we would want to extract potentially. And this is a good time to like actually start building a sane component like directory, moving like the inputs there and everything. Yeah, don't need to search for the references there. We should have called it components actually. Yeah, I think components is better. Oh, and we don't need this present in the scope. So fun fact, if you're writing pure functions like this that basically return like React elements, you always have to have React imported at the top level. Um, Something to keep in mind. Yeah, so let's add like button. Yeah, sure, add to Git. That's such an annoying prompt. I don't know why, but I never click like never ask me again, even though it seems like something you should totally be doing if something is bothering you that much. So this is basically gonna be like our button component. We need like an on-click handler as well. That seems pretty sensible. So let's import that button as well. So you guys probably don't feel this, but because of the stream, I'm lagging so much that WebStorm can't index the fucking file. Oh god. So I chose to create a button that like functions like this, where we're passing in the label directly. Not necessarily the best choice, perhaps. Uh, what you would potentially prefer to do is um, allow the user to basically add anything as a child element and then just render children as a prop instead. Um, I guess this is like some decision by convention. We're gonna close one of the buttons. Okay. Another interesting thing. Oh, we have another button over here. Okay, excellent. And assuming we didn't fuck up anything, yeah, misplaced the label somewhere. Not sure why we have these. All right, because we pasted from the input file. Yeah, that's fine. All right, excellent. So we're on a roll there. Yeah, that's pretty good. I think we can start like segueing into what the topic of the stream for today was supposed to be, basically, and that's React PropTypes. Uh, so property types are React's way of providing you with some form of type safety. It's obviously not strict, and it's not as efficient or as regular type safety in other languages. It's not calculated at compile time. It's there in runtime, and it's only particularly useful in development, because in development, uh, whenever you use a different type from what was specified, you will get a error message in the console, and you will have the dev tools basically screaming at you that you've made a mistake and that you should, check this part of your code specifically. Uh, in production, uh, it basically swallows all of those errors, so it's like it's not even there. So it's an optional thing you can add to your components, and you should, basically, is the idea, because uh, it makes the components potentially self-documenting. Type systems have a way of, doing that, basically. It improves the quality of your tooling. So, especially with stuff like TypeScript, uh, Visual Studio Code and WebStorm will pick up the types whenever you're using the component or calling any of the methods. And it's good for like maintenance, especially when there's a possibility that other engineers will be coming into the code base at some point in the future. And having React PropTypes inside of the project will potentially be helpful for them, to help them like navigate what's going on and what this component is even doing and how is it displaying data and whatever. And obviously, I think most important part is that it helps you catch bugs, because if let's say you've defined that um, the label element here in button is supposed to be a string, right? And if somebody passes in like an object, for example, what gets rendered here is potentially gonna be shit, or it's either going to like break your component or cause a bug or something, and you'd get a warning like heads up uh, as soon as that happens, and it's basically like a cue for you to go and inspect your code and see how you're providing the props to this component, and what you're doing wrong, basically. Another like huge advantage to using prop types is there's a lot of these developer tools out there today. For example, React Storybook, which is like a component library manager where you install it inside your project, and it generates a sandbox playground for you to play with everything, and it uses prop types to make that sandbox happen, because it picks up the types that it should be using. So maybe we could check out that project. uh, Not React Playground, sorry. uh, Storybook, I think it's called, right? Yeah. So it's a really fun tool. I recommend using it in your project. Uh, it's not just like React only. Apparently, you can use use it for React Native and Angular and Vue. Thank you, Austin. Austin? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Thank you for following me on Twitch. Um, Please let me know in the chat what technologies you're working on, and are you here just to chill? Are you here hopefully to learn some React? You know, like I said, I really want to hear that from you. So yeah, Storybook like generates these uh, interactive playgrounds where you can inspect every component and look at what it does, basically. So that's pretty cool. All right, let's get started with React PropTypes. It used to be part of the main React package. Now it's actually um, a separate module, um, which technically makes React more lightweight, the bundle itself, because prop types are no longer part of it. This was a change, I think, in React 15 point something, it would have a deprecation warning. As of React 16, they don't ship it. So I'm not sure which one of these is the correct package. Honestly, I remember this. Okay, so this is like additional, and this is the main package itself. Okay. So let's add that to our project. Using yarn here. It's not a very big package, and like I said, it doesn't really ship anything to your production bundle itself. Um, it's mostly there to help you in uh, development, to catch problems at runtime. So let's start by using it in our button component. Now this does mean we're going to change the syntax a bit. We're still exporting, you know. Now we don't have anonymous exports anymore. Is this how it's used? I don't think this is how it's used. No, I think that's correct, yeah. Not sure why WebStorm is giving me slack there. Right. Right, so here's an example of what happened. So you see I've said that onClick should be like string. Obviously onClick is a function, and everywhere in our code we're using a function. But React PropTypes noticed that this was a mistake that I'm making at app.js line 60. So if we go to line 60, we can see that we're indeed passing in a function, not a string as it was specified here. So it caught that little problem for us, and usually the problem is the other way around. You have your prop types good, but you're passing in an incorrect value. This was obviously intentional. What am I missing here? But received undefined. Okay, so it's not function, it's func. It takes a little to get used to some of these API decisions that they've made. Honestly, what they could have done is have both proptypes.func and proptypes.function and have one be the alias for another. But that's fine. You get used to it. So this is another one that we have to do. Obviously, we're still exporting that directly. So what else do we have here? So class name is string. This is a string. Type. Now type, here's an example of a more complex feature set that we can use. We want type to be like an enum value. So it should either be like text or number, for example. So we can use, I believe it's one of, and we say, it should be a string called text, or it should be like string number. If it's if it's not one of these two things, then the type is wrong. Value. I'm not sure if that's the correct syntax. Thinking of it. Yeah. So one of is this. That's what we used. Now we're going to be using one of type because we want value to be basically either a string, a number, or maybe undefined. That's also fine. I'm not sure how undefined is handled. That's a good question, because I don't think it's like a separate type. Unfortunately, by jumping in through the package, I don't think we're going to see all of them. All right, so actually undefined is fine in this case, but if we were to say like is required, then undefined would not be a permitted value. And so in this case, it might actually be beneficial to say that label is required. And in the case of a button, let's say that our onClick and label are all required. Excellent. And we can see that we haven't done any mistakes. Pretty good. Funk. Yes, thank you, Aston. Sorry I didn't see the chat on time. Definitely gonna have to like set up a different overlay where I can keep track of the chat as I'm typing, because you guys actually spot a lot of mistakes. In the past stream, we had viewers notice a couple of mistakes while we were doing this utilities file. It's really good. It's like, I guess, remote pair programming or something. Really good stuff. So where else can we do this? Well, we also have like our card component. And we could go through and do the same thing, like again, basically. But let's do something more interesting, because remember, like our state is a collection of objects that have these properties. And what we can do is we can use React PropTypes to define custom types that have custom like elements, and then basically we can then reuse the same type in multiple components instead of like writing annotations for each property all the time. So for example, instead of like passing the ID and the name and the initiative and the hit points, this should realistically be one like property called like element. Let's call it just element. Have it pass in element. Get rid of all these. And then in our card component, now let's have all of this. Have element, replace it with just element, and then use. So what's the reason behind this? Because we're going to create our own like custom type that will validate this instead of having to individually validate each of the fields every time we're passing the state element somewhere. So one way we could do that is extracting it over here. This seems like a good place to extract that. So let's like create our own custom element type. And now what is exactly the syntax for defining your own object of? Okay, so we're going to define it like this. That's number and name, right? Terrific. So now we have our own custom like prop type element kind of thing, like a custom type essentially. So what we can do is import that type here. And then when we sort of do const card equals this, so what we want to do at that point is basically say that element is of type element type, and these three are all funcs. So that should be fine. Let's see. Right, so that's fine. I'm going to give you an example what would happen if this was like. Well, actually, no. I don't think it's right. Let's see if we can cause a mistake to appear. No, that should be reporting like an error. I've made a mistake. Oh, right. What I should be using is shape, not object of. Someone noticed that in the chat? No? Haha, this time you guys are being slow. So shape is what we use to define the keys of such an object. That's one part of the reason why this isn't causing an error. The other is that I'm, okay, what I should be doing is PropTypes object of, is that correct? Um, okay, yeah. So this is fine. This is oh, is it shape of? No, it's just shape. Hmm. Well, I'm honestly not sure why this isn't causing an error right now. So we used PropType shape to define basically a shape that's going to model according to this. This is what an individual element is like. And then we're validating that, because this is the wrong. Okay, we made a stupid typo, guys. It's element, not elements. And there we go. There's the problem here. So now if you just say element type, there we go. Excellent. So this is the proper syntax finally. So we used PropType shape to define the shape of an object and define the fields and to define like the value, the types of these fields. And then we said, you know what, this element that we're passing in, it's a custom type called element type that we defined here. And please use those definitions. And this is helpful because now we can reuse this shape everywhere else. So if we have another component that's using the same element, we can just reuse this. If we hadn't have done it like this way, we would have been like defining all of these fields every time we create a new component. And I left an intentional mistake here. This should be a number. Right, so I think that's fine. Except it gets to this point where we've initially defined, as you can see here, initiative is a number initially, but as we are basically setting the state here from what's inside the event that's being passed down by the input field, it's no longer a number, it's actually being set as a string. And that doesn't really bother us so much. If we can go two ways. We can either cast this to a number, and if we cast that to a number, then obviously it will always be a number. Or we could say that we're fine with hit points and initiative actually being strings. So for the purposes of like displaying, of showing off more of prop types and their features here, let's go with this idea of allowing this key to have one of two types. And I believe we've used the same thing here basically, yes, on input as well. So, and obviously that's a function that accepts an array, not the key. Okay, pretty good. Does that look better? I think that looks better. Again, one of the things that we'll be doing at some point is adding prettier to the project to format all of this stuff for us. I'm thinking we write more code first so that when we do add prettier in, we can see just how much of an impact it will have. I think that sounds like a solid idea. So I think that now we've annotated all of our components basically. Our app container currently has no props, so there's nothing to annotate there. Everything else has been annotated. Perfect. So yeah, that was like short quick start into using React PropTypes. It was like the major topic of today's stream that I wanted to cover. It's one of those simple things, I think, that actually provides good value for you in your project. And it's one of those things that's good for you to learn early on, especially if you're a beginner just starting out with React. So what else could we do today? Are we gonna go for adding like new features or maybe improving the code a bit more? Well, one thing I wanted to do is add some animations to this. So you'll see that now as we're doing this, it doesn't look horrible, but it doesn't look that impressive either, especially as the list like shuffles. You know, the card just shows where it's supposed to be at some point, and it's not very clear how the indicator is working. So I came across today, I saw this library called React Flip Move, and let's go uh, through this together. So it's a module that was built to tackle the common but problem of animating a list of items when the list's order changes, which is literally what I would like to have done here. And if I don't have to write the animations myself, that would be like terrific. So like check out the demo here. Okay, so it has like 2 grid. Well, let's say things rotate. Yeah, that's pretty good actually. So, oh man, this demo. Yeah, this is a lot of fun, and you can play around with all the settings apparently, which, fun enough, is what we'll want to do because the default doesn't seem to be. Oh, it has some like interesting presets. I wonder if you can just use those or if you're supposed to like remember and add these. So let's have a look at how we can integrate this to our project. And then maybe we could go over the source code of this module to basically learn how the community built this. And I'm assuming that it's a community effort. Yeah, 25 contributors. So let's take a time to like thank all the good folks that worked on this. So Josh being like, actually it seems like Josh did most of the work here, and it's been an ongoing effort for like a couple of years now. Yeah, 2 years at least. Very nice, very nice. Excellent work, Josh. I'm looking forward to adding this to the project. So we've added the React flip move dependency. And the next thing we're going to basically be doing is like reading through the documentation and seeing how we can implement that. So, once we import it, oh, excellent. So we just include the wrapper around our map function that's adding all of the list items. So if you'll recall, that's in app.js. And it's basically here. So terrific. So that should be like good enough. Unfortunately, I don't think we can like pass in the preset as a string. I think we have to like copy all of these values. So like, let's do that. So we have duration 900, delay at 0, easing is the cubic base here. Yeah. Now how do you supply these values? Is it an array? Is it like sorry, that's I hope it's an array or something. I mean, let's literally like jump into the code and see what props are defined here. Yeah, so you can see that he's using TypeScript annotations actually, which is really helpful. These really improve developer tooling a lot. Actually, when I was writing like, for example, like, I don't know, when I was writing delay, did it offer the type? No, that's unfortunate. I think Visual Studio Code has better support for that than WebStorm, at least by default. You could probably mess around with the options to get that working easier. Okay, so I didn't actually I didn't actually get what I came in for. So stagger duration by. How much was that? 260 milliseconds. Okay. And how much for the stagger? It's at 0. Okay. Oh, and we can actually use this to define like appearance animation. So what we are customizing right now is the animation for how the elements are flipping. but we can also set an appear in animation, and there's some like smart defaults for you. Really nice. Uh, I think elevator sounds fun. Let's look at that. But it's not working like that right out of the box. So it says stateless function components cannot be given references. Okay, so apparently our card component has to be actually defined as, you know, a full-on React component, not just a stateless component. That's a bit unfortunate, but I'm willing to rewrite that so we can get the cool animations. It sounds like a decent trade-off, and we're not actually going to be managing any state anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. New keyboard shortcuts can sometimes be a pain to get used to. That's fine. So what we want to do, I believe, is say return, yada yada yada. And we want to take this from the props. Okay, yeah, terrific. That seems exactly like something we would want to. And I believe we can still declare the prop types like this. You can move them inside of the class as well. Okay. So there's no error here, but there's also no animation happening. Okay, that's interesting. So there's no obvious error in the console either. Is there something in here? No, everything seems to be working right. It's an overkill for a project maybe, but you can convert any stateless component to class component using recompose. Stefan with the awesome tips again. So yeah, it's a bit out of scope here. But honestly, I had no idea Recompose had this in the API. So to class. Takes a function component and wraps it in a class. This can be used as a fallback for libraries that need to add a reference to oh, I see. So it's exactly what we needed in this case. Yeah, so the pattern of libraries adding refs to component seems to be very common, is the idea, since this is obviously a widespread solution for that. Awesome. I'm not going to be adding recompose, but this is a really good tip, and there's a good chance you might even have recompose in some of your project if you're using GraphQL or something. Yeah, I mean, obviously not limited to that, but I think that's the same type of community. Cool. But where are my goddamn animations? Is what I want to know. Like maybe the parameters I supplied are all messed up. Maybe that's the problem. Yeah, so the parameters I provided were shit, basically. Which I'm not sure I understand why. Is it because we never included the cubic Bezier curve as a parameter? But honestly, I didn't even see how you could include it in the first place. So, are there like any docs here or? No, these are, oh no, there's a documentations folder. I mean, let's look at the API reference. So, yes. Oh, so this is how you're supposed to provide the parameter. Yeah, I missed that one. Where's the playground? Oh, there it is. Ah, I see. So this interface has been optimized to appear helpful, but to actually be a pain in the ass if you actually want to copy some of these values. Either that or I'm missing something. And by the way, that's not me complaining, because this is like a really awesome library right from the start, because you get some really cool animations without doing much, and it doesn't seem like it's a particularly large library to be adding into your. But again, I'm messing something up, and I'm honestly not sure what it is. Did I mistype Bezier? No. So duration is 900, delay is 0, stagger by 0, and duration by 260. So honestly, that should be exactly this. Yeah, if any of you guys are noticing what I'm doing wrong, please leave it in the chat. Okay, so apparently the animation prop was actually the problem. We probably had to provide, they were either conflicting or we needed to provide the entire set of animations. Which is very unfortunate because this default animation is kind of annoying. Yeah, honestly, it looked a lot better on his demo than it does on mine. Oh, that's pretty neat. Okay, this is just like you're a sadist who hates his users and you want to make them watch a very painfully long animation of list items shuffling. Why not go all the way and like say put duration to 2 seconds? Yeah, yeah, baby. Anyway, I think this is fine. It's a little flashy. Let's cut that down. Nobody needs to watch that a million times. Man, that's too long, honestly. Like, I seriously despise animations sometimes because you spend a lot of time getting the code right, and then you spend even more time tweaking all the parameters, all the strings, all the tweens and whatever. It's really helpful when you have a good designer to make a prototype of that for you in, I don't know, Figma or something, and then you can just copy the values and not worry about it. Because this way you're spending too much time wondering, um, is this natural? Is this a good look? Does this make sense or not? So yeah, that's fun. Okay, I think we've actually accomplished quite a bit today. We've refactored some code. We've included prop types to our project. We've added some nice animations using React Flip Move. That's pretty decent, I feel. So was there anything else I wanted to do today on the agenda? Uh, okay, so comments. We're gonna talk about writing comments and documenting code itself. So there's a good bunch of people who will say that good code is documentation in it of itself. That's not necessarily wrong because really good code will have certain qualities where it's not too verbose, it's not doing too much. Every method, every function is doing just enough work to have the entire function make sense, and it will usually like do exactly what it says. So uh, if you have a function called sort elements, you expect that function to sort elements, right? This one doesn't. So sort elements in this case should actually be called uh, get elements from state, sort them, and set them. Obviously not a very good name, but it's because this method is doing more than what the name implies. A function that's called sort should basically be doing sorting. If you look at the code itself, only like less than 50% of the body of this method is doing some kind of sorting. The rest is side effects and some other stuff that potentially shouldn't really be in there. Um, in this case, I don't think I minded that much, but it's one of those examples where when you look at this, it's relatively easy to understand, but this is not self-documenting code. The name sort elements is implying different things to what is actually happening. So obviously, sometimes you could write something that looks like good code, but it's actually not, and it's not self-documenting at all. However, sometimes that doesn't mean you should be documenting everything with comments and whatever. Sometimes it's trivial, like this is one of those examples where it's trivial, so maybe it's not that important. Uh, Other times comments can lie. People, they write a comment and the comment makes sense. It's really good. It's very good for that comment to be there. And then, you know, turns out that at some point they refactor the function, and now that function is something else, but they leave the comment. And what you end up having there is a very unfortunate case of the comment saying lies. And a lot of authors uh, frequently use this expression, comments are lies. They're either lies at that very moment, or they're essentially lies waiting to happen. Another thing I commonly see engineers do, and good engineers, like not beginners, good engineers do this as well. They comment out a piece of code and they just leave it there for some reason, and they commit that to Git and it stays there. And then when another engineer comes, he's like looking at that and he's afraid to delete it because he or she is thinking, well, if the previous author left this here, it must be important for later, so I'm gonna leave it. And then it just stays there for months and years maybe. And some other innocent bloke comes around and he sees that comment and he thinks it's important. He thinks that the commented out code is somehow important, and then they try to derive meaning from it. So in my opinion, comments can be potentially harmful, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't have comments at all. So here's a couple of patterns I think they're really good when it comes to components, when it comes to comments in React. One of them is potentially like providing a file overview comment on top of everything, if you think that's important. Like, for example, here it's a button. You know what a button is, okay? This shouldn't require any comments, right? But what about something like this? It's a card. It's a very specific card, and you spend some time looking at it and figuring out what it's supposed to be. But if you added like file overview comment here, explaining like in one sentence what this component is about, you might potentially save someone's time. And that's usually a comment that doesn't change too much over time. This file is here to provide this component, and this component is supposed to do that. That's not a specification that changes that often. Another thing where I feel like comments are extremely important is when you have methods that just end up being huge. Like you may, if you've been in the business for some time now, you've probably seen functions that are like 10 times as big as this entire project right now. That's obviously something that needs to be documented. And really what you're looking to document is not just what does this piece of code do, what does this block of code do. You're also looking to document like maybe some decisions behind that, like, because that's usually a result of business decisions. Like the client wanted this, so we added this huge if block and this and that. The problem again is if you don't keep those comments updated, they are a potential source of lies. So what you should perhaps be doing is maintaining a separate like decisions file. Doesn't have to be part of the project. It could be like a doc somewhere else where you document major architectural decisions, major business decisions about important issues, basically, that you can refer to as like a source of truth, basically. And like one final thing that I used to do I don't do it that much anymore, but it is potentially useful, or it was at some point while using like Visual Studio Code, to annotate functions. Uh, let me give you an example. For example, here in utilities, since if you're not using something that provides a form of type safety for you in JavaScript, like you're not using flow types, you're not using TypeScript, you're out there in the wild, basically, when it comes to types, it might at least be a good idea to like maintain a contract. This is something they often talk about in books like The Pragmatic Programmer, where it's basically like at least specify what this function expects to receive and what its output should be, and call it, and use that as a pattern everywhere. And if you use that as a pattern everywhere, the code should be a lot uh, easier to maintain, and you should probably be having less bugs. Because if we specify, you know, right from the start that this should work like this, for example, we've annotated some form of contract with everyone who uses this function. Uh, in integrated development environments, it's potentially also cool because you get some form of type annotation, I believe. See, like that's pretty good, right? Um, a lot of people have been developing like JavaScript code without these helpful tools, and it can be quite of a nightmare. Why did I basically stop doing this? Well, the reason is I think it ends up being better to just switch to a type safe version of JavaScript like flow types or TypeScript than to manually annotate all of this, because your annotations at the end of the day are also comments. And like we've established, comments can tell lies. They can, at some point they're true. Somewhere in the future, they might be lies because you haven't really updated any of them. So that's like a random tidbit of information that might be like useful. And hooray, we earned like a new achievement on Twitch. Yeah, I don't really care about that, but whatever. So that's like documenting code. What about documenting libraries or APIs and whatever? I think that's a really good topic, and it's basically a segue for us to talk about Docosaurus, or I don't think I can pronounce that right. It's basically a pun on documentation and dinosaur. It's a project by the folks at Facebook. They basically created like their own little static site generator based on React that they first used internally to create documentation for all of the Facebook open source projects. React uses it, Redux uses it, Prettier, Reason, all of like Facebook's major open source projects are using Docosaurus for that. It's not that different from any other like static content generator, like I don't know, Jackal is obviously the first thing that comes to mind, but since we're talking about like React.js, Gatsby might be a better comparison there. Uh, so what Docosaurus is, it's not nothing in my opinion that's too innovative on that. It doesn't do anything that you can't do with any of those other ones, but they've made it easier to get started. You can like have an entire website and a blog set up with really nice default styles right away, and customize that when you need it is the idea. So I'm actually really like fascinated with the project because on one hand I'm amazed that it took so long for someone to publish something like this. I've I've spent a lot of time searching for like projects and libraries that make writing documentation easier and publishing it obviously. And I never really found something that was easy to get started with and simple to use, but also like fast to edit stuff. And when you add the additional like requirement of having a blog with like a feed and everything, things get even harder for some reason. So I actually like had one pull request merged to their repository, some minor like updates to the documentation, and I plan on like going through the issues and getting involved with the project more. So one potential like topic for future streams will be basically live streaming my work on projects like Docosaurus or something else where we can do like open source work together and um, post pull requests together and stuff like that. I think that could be like a fun case for future streams. Right. So, do you have any like other topics we want to talk about today? Well, I think we've um, gone through just about everything that's in the agenda for today. Right. I want to address some general feedback you guys left me uh, during the first stream and basically what I've hopefully learned from that. So, a lot of you wanted to basically suggest that uh, I should have like a streaming schedule that's a bit more regular for anyone who's interested in. I don't plan on having one uh, for a while now. I might start streaming regularly during February. Um, and this will usually be like weekend streams. And we'll see, if people find these helpful, if they find these useful. Uh, I'll do more of them, basically, is the idea. Uh, Another thing is like I post like recordings of these streams here on Twitch and on YouTube as well. So you'll always be able to watch these videos even if you miss the stream. I always think it's a better idea to like hop in to the stream because you get to like interact with me and all the other people here. Uh, I think it's more fun. I think you have more space to ask questions and get feedback, get ideas, basically, whatever. And Trying to think here, was there any more comments I had last time? Right, and people were suggesting that we have they come up with a better structure for these. So that's something I'm definitely gonna be working on. Today, first time we didn't have any agenda at all. We didn't know what we were going to be doing. Today we had some kind of agenda, and we actually achieved what we were planning to do. Future streams will basically be more tighter, I suppose. I'll have a better idea of what I plan on accomplishing and showing you guys and girls, and you'll basically have a better idea of what to expect and what the ultimate goal of every stream is. So yeah, that's basically the idea. So wanted to thank you all for tuning in, for watching the stream. I'll be posting the video of this as well in case you missed something. I'm trying to make it really accessible for everyone. So because I say a lot of stupid stuff during these streams that might be realistically a waste of your time. So what I do here on Twitch and on YouTube, and I'm trying to show that to you, but Twitch is painfully slow sometimes. And what I do is I make these timestamp annotations in every video, as you can hopefully see. Yeah, sure, I tell him to pause a million times and he doesn't. This is horrible, but whatever. So yeah, I create these timed annotations with little comments on what's being discussed there. So what you can do is jump into these videos and use the annotations to watch the parts that might be interesting to you. So you don't have to attempt to sit through the entire thing, because honestly that might be a waste of your time. So anyway, thank you all once again for taking part in the stream today. Thank you for interacting with me in the chat. Really good comments, really good feedback. And why, thank you very much, Stefan. I'll have to buy you a beer tomorrow for being such a wonderful gentleman and helping everyone in the stream today. All right. Thank you all for watching, and have fun coding. And keep coding. That's the most important thing. Like ABC, always be coding, right? See you guys later.